Nadeem touched on the issue of Turkey. Turkey, as president, is, of course, due at that NATO summit in Lithuania, which begins tomorrow. He's expected once again to meet the Swedish Prime Minister to discuss Stockholm's stalled application to join the alliance. Our diplomatic editor, James Bay, is standing by for us in Vilnius ahead of that NATO summit. How much pressure, James, is Turkey likely to be under to support Sweden's membership in NATO? Because as it stands, that's the only thing holding it back.
Yes, all the other allies, well, actually Hungary hasn't ratified yet, but Hungary says it will ratify if Turkey does. But yes, real high-stakes talks just on the very eve of this summit and all the NATO leaders arriving here. The Swedish Prime Minister is here, and now Turkey's President Erdogan has just landed in the last few moments at Vilnius airport for these talks. But of course, in recent hours, while speaking in Turkey, he's added a new condition, and it's a pretty big one. He is now linking the idea that Sweden should join NATO and become the 32nd member of NATO with his own country's stalled, it seemed almost aborted bid to join the European Union. I think that's a big development, a big problem, I think, for the NATO allies, the other NATO allies, and for the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. This is what he said about it a short time ago.
I support Turkey's ambitions to become a member of the European Union. At the same time, we need to remember that what we agreed in Madrid was a specific list of conditions that Sweden has to meet to be a full member of the alliance. And Sweden has met these conditions, and that's about removing restrictions on arms exports. That has happened. Then it's about strengthening the cooperation between Turkey and Sweden on fighting terrorism. That's taking place.
Well, that issue, the issue of Sweden joining NATO, is one of the problem areas that is going to be discussed by the NATO allies as they gather here for the next couple of days. But there are other issues too. I think the atmosphere soured for some privately. They're not saying very much in public. The decision by the US to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. But the other issue is how exactly the NATO allies handle Ukraine itself and its aspirations to be a NATO member. They're certainly not going to make it a NATO member at this summit, but they need to put some clear language, according to President Zelensky, that there's a concrete path for Ukraine to join NATO. They're working even now, not just the negotiations on Sweden, but they're working even now on the final language of the communique, and there are differences among the NATO allies, we understand. But an important development in the last couple of hours, the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, has said there's been progress on one thing, and that's that Ukraine should be able to fast-track the process. There's something called a membership action plan, which all recent members of NATO, when they've joined, have had to go through. That's an arduous series of political, economic and military tests. Well, it looks like Ukraine is going to be given the opportunity to skip that process.
Interesting stuff. James Bay, our diplomatic editor, speaking to us there from Vilnius. Well, let's get some reaction now to what we've been hearing out of Turkey. We can speak to our correspondent Rasul Serda, who's in Istanbul. So we heard there, Rasul, from James, there's this sense in Vilnius that President Erdogan is making these new demands and that NATO membership for Sweden and the EU membership for Turkey are simply two different issues. Why has the Turkish side raised this now? What are they hoping to accomplish?
Well, it's as of now, it's not clear whether this is a demand or a condition. However, linking Turkey's membership to European Union to Sweden's accession to NATO is quite a new element now in all of these negotiations. So that is a very quite maximalist demand. So today, just ahead of flying to Lithuania, President Erdogan had a presser, and he said that Turkey has been waiting at the gates of the European Union for almost around 5 decades, and it's the time that the European Union gave a positive signs to Turkey's full membership to the European Union, and that will also encourage Turkey to give the green light to Sweden's accession to NATO. But as I said, it's not clear whether this is a new condition or he's trying to convince or encourage the European Union to be more positive toward Turkey. But as I said, it is quite a new element. And the experts here are saying that Erdogan, by coming with these maximalist demands, probably he's aware that Turkey's membership to the European Union is not going to happen anytime soon. However, he's trying to secure some of the possible and moderate concessions, such as the modernization of F-16 fighter jets of Turkey that Turkey has been asking, but is still awaiting the approval of the US Senate, and also the customs union agreement to be reformed with the European Union, some of the trade benefits, and also the free visa for the Turkish citizens to the Schengen area. So if Erdogan can get these demands, or at least if his demands are met by this, that's going to be quite a success for him. But while all of these new developments are happening, the diplomatic efforts are also being intensified. Yesterday, we have seen a phone call between President Erdogan and President Biden. So the focus was the Sweden's accession to NATO. And just 3 hours ago, there has been another important phone call between Turkish Foreign Minister and the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. So that also the focus was the membership of Sweden to NATO. As of now, the mood here in Turkey, that Turkey is not going to change its position. Still, they say that Ankara is saying that despite some of the positive steps taken by Sweden, it is still not sufficient enough that Turkey can give the green light to that. However, if these negotiations produce a tangible result, and if Turkey gives a green light to Sweden's accession, that will be the biggest surprise of this NATO summit.
Rasul Serdar there for us in Istanbul.